What's up, guys? So today we're gonna do something that some of you might not like. We're gonna criticize Dark Souls 3 a little bit, but more importantly, just the Covenants in general.
Yeah, we have problems with a lot of other aspects in the game, but we'll leave that to another video. For now, we just want to talk about the Covenants because there's a lot of in-depth discussion that we're going to have here.
Yeah, and like some of the Covenants, like some of them aren't great. I mean, it's definitely better than Dark Souls 2 Covenants were, but some of them are also as good as Dark Souls 2. And they've never really done something particularly brilliant with their Covenants.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a look at that and see if maybe how they can improve the Covenants. Obviously, we're going to like go over the good, the bad, and then how we're going to change how we'd like to change the Covenants, and maybe some more Covenant ideas at the end of the video as well. But this is purely just open discussion, guys. Let us know what you guys think about the Covenants as well, definitely, because we don't want to just criticize the game and just hate on it. We want to like see how we can improve the game, obviously, because we do love these games.
We do,
and that's what all our criticism's always been about. Is just this is how we want to raise these points so that we can make the game better in the long run, because we want the games to be as good as they possibly can be, because these games are phenomenal.
Exactly. And we just feel that after having 4 games worth of Covenants implemented...
Oh yeah, because Demons didn't have any, did it?
We just think that, you know, by this point it might be a little bit better, but I suppose we'll just get into the things that we want to talk about now, and yeah, let's get on with it. Okay, so we're going to go over like the good things that we do enjoy about the new Covenant system. We do like the fact that the game gives you just a straight full red eye orb near the beginning of the game. This is really good because it will keep the life of the game going on for long. I mean, it will still possibly be detrimental to other Covenants the way they've been implemented, but at the very least you'll always at least get guaranteed PvP with an invasion item. They've also streamlined the Covenants. They're nowhere near as convoluted as they were in Dark Souls 1, and not so much Dark Souls 2, but a little bit.
They have more of a presence than they did in Dark Souls 2 as well.
Yeah, and it's fantastic that you can just switch in and out of Covenants on the fly when you want to. That's really just the little quality of life changes that they've given to the game has been great overall, but especially when it's came to the Covenants.
And no soul memory.
Oh yeah, no soul memory, can't fucking...
So good. Now the Covenants don't die immediately.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Dark Moonblade only worked for like the first 2 weeks of Dark Souls 2, and then everybody was too high a soul memory for the Dark Moonblade to do anything.
So yeah, there's that. But frankly, there's not been that many great extra changes that they've given, and that's about all we've got. There is a bit of bad, and I guess
some of the Covenants are sort of more distinct though, because like they do have area defense Covenants, and like the Way of Blue isn't as useless as it once was.
Yeah.
But there's still some bad things that we do want to touch on, obviously.
There's huge disparity in the game in terms of the quality of the Covenants, so I guess we'll get to that.
So some of the bad things that we find about the Covenants is that there's not really a lot of variation between them, and this is down to the fact that they've streamlined them so much.
Yeah.
None of the Covenants really pose like a really big standout role anymore. A lot of the Covenants are like the same.
Especially given that you've got the full red eye orb as well.
Yeah, there's 9 Covenants in the game, and 4 Covenants are... Well, 2 Covenants are the same and another 2 Covenants do the same thing as well, just at different points in the game. So, like, there's not a lot of variety when it comes to that. There's no Covenants that focus on, like, a particular thing as much as they would in other games.
Yeah, there's also no offline Covenant in the game,
like the Champions Covenant in Dark Souls 2, which is really quite interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a massive oversight.
Yeah.
There's only 2 Covenant ranks, so you've got less incentive to even be in a Covenant technically. Really, the Covenants should be forcing interesting player interactions, like Bloodborne with the Vile Bloods and the Executioners.
And sometimes the Hunter of Hunters as well.
Yeah, I mean... They already do force a decent amount of interaction, but nothing quite as interesting as that, again, because you're given the full red eye orb from the beginning of the game, which isn't a bad thing, it's just they should have worked around it.
Yeah, and each of the Covenants as well, like, we'd rather they have specific purposes as opposed to, like, the Blue Sentinels and the Dark Moonblade, for example, who have the exact same purpose.
Yeah, literally the exact same.
And the Farron, who have literally the exact same purpose, just the area changes. So it's like, yeah, they streamlined them, but some of them have just sort of became the same thing, just different names, and that's something we'd like to obviously change and just like give the Covenants more definition.
Yeah.
So I guess we can get on to some of our changes.
Yeah.
What we'd like to see, rather. Okay, so some of the changes we'd like to see. Now, bear with us on this one, because this is going to make more sense as we get to certain Covenants. So we'd like to see a Covenant-reliant Black Eye Orb. Essentially, there is a Black Eye Orb in Dark Souls 3 which does that you do invade a certain NPC with it. So like that can still function the same, but give the black orb an online aspect, such as like it will change color based on your covenant. So like if you're in the Dark Moonblades, it will change to a blue eye orb, and then it will have like covenant reliant effects that get put in place.
Yeah.
Like I said, this will make more sense when we get to those covenants. So if we do mention a black eye orb, this is what we're talking about, where it's an orb that changes its definition based on your covenant. And we'd also keep the red eye orb in the game there, so you can have like covenantless PvP sort of thing still in there as well.
Because we do feel that having the red eye orb from the beginning of the game is very beneficial to the PvP overall, and that in and of itself keeps the other covenants alive in a way. So also we would like to see the embered unembered thing, that we would like to see that changed, or maybe just not being in the game to begin with. Obviously invaders have full health, because right now when you invade you're at an extreme disadvantage.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like, oh, I invade and I've got a bit of a chance. Like you're most likely you're gonna die if you're invading.
Yeah. Also, just touching on the embered unembered thing, I think we would rather have the hollowing system from Dark Souls 2 implemented, because it's not like the way it works in Dark Souls 3 is the same as it worked in Demon Souls, where you die, you've just lost flat HP and that's it. But Dark Souls 2 is like a gradual punishment for the more you die, the worse off things will get until you overcome it.
Yeah.
So we'd rather that, because Dark Souls 2 also allowed you to be invaded while hollow, and we'd like to be invaded while not in like human form, quote unquote, or not embered.
Yeah, that only keeps the PvP more alive.
Yeah. Same with bosses dying, stopping people from invading. That's something we would like to change.
100%, definitely take that out.
Yeah, because that means that like that affects covenants where the objective is to get the host to the boss or to get the host past the boss, because now that as a player you can't help in that area anymore.
Yeah.
And just one more just tiny thing about the red sign. Summon is where we put it down. We're putting the red sign down for duels. So don't treat it like a red eye orb and summon is like miles away.
Yeah,
because the person is summoning us to fight us.
Yeah, they know you're there.
Exactly. It's not a surprise. Why do we need to invade a random part? It's a red orb. It's a summoned invasion.
Yeah.
So summon is where we put the orb down. That was something, not the orb, the sign down. That was something that Dark Souls 1 done like really well.
Yeah.
Dark Souls 2 didn't do that either, and it just meant that when you did use your red sign soapstone, you'd have to figure out like the way you need to go just to get to where you put the red sign.
It just adds extra time onto it.
And red signs are for setting up things like fight clubs and 1v1s, and you just want to get to them. You don't want to run through the entire area just for that. So that's another small change we'd like to see that would actually make the PvP much better in the long run.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the specific covenants that they've put into Dark Souls 3 and the problems that arise with them.
Okay, so we're going to start with the covenants that we're going to categorise as like the sort of cooperative covenants, the covenants that you call on for help. So we'll start with the Way of Blue covenant. This is a covenant that serves basically no purpose other than new players that need help with invaders.
Yeah.
The covenant has no ranks, it has no reward system. There's basically no incentive to use it outside of randomly getting help if you get invaded.
Yeah. But your chances are you're going to take it off as soon as you get to another covenant, because there's no reason to be in the covenant. So there's two other covenants that essentially rely on people being in this one rewardless covenant for them to work, like, period.
Yeah, so these other two covenants, of course, being Dark Moonblade and Blue Sentinels, who if you're wearing a Way of Blue covenant icon, then if you get invaded, you can summon a member of one of these two covenants in to help you kill the red.
But the issue
That's
with that,
the problem.
Yeah, the issue with that is most people are going to be in this covenant are very low level. So
there's already the summoning range restriction in place, as well as the boss has to be alive,
as well as they have to be
wear
invaded.
The rune.
They have
to wear the covenant rune.
Yep. And because of that, there's so few people that are going to be that have these requirements.
And there's going to be so many Blue Sentinels and Dark Moonblade that it's musical chairs for the invasion slot.
They outnumber the Way of Blue people. I'm going to give a very conservative estimate here, and at least 5 to 1. So the chances of you being actually summoned into the Way of the Blue world is ridiculously small. And when your covenant items, which are pretty decent for Dark Moonblade, are relying on these people, it's a massive design flaw. It's such a huge oversight. I really can't believe that this is still implemented into the game, especially when we saw how it just doesn't work in Dark Souls 2.
Let's not forget as well that you get the Way of Blue so early and the Dark Moonblade halfway through the game. it means that everybody the Dark Moonblade could have matched up with have already ditched the way of blue. And even if they are wearing the way of blue, still, it's...
By that point, it's just probably charity on the
Exactly.
host player.
They literally have to wear the way of blue, and they know, like, I'm only wearing this so that Dark Moonblade and Blue Sentinels have something to do, because there's nothing else to do with it.
If that's you, you're doing the God's work.
Yeah, honestly, thanks.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Because you're keeping PvP alive. It's like the people who would indict in Dark Souls 1, thank you for giving us sin so that the blues have something to do. So how we could make this covenant better is something we want to do. And we think something like a blue sign soapstone where, say, you put that down and it would show up in other people's worlds. What this blue sign would do is, if you picked a blue sign, you would be taken into the person who put the sign down. You'd be taken to their world.
As opposed with the white sign where it's the opposite way about, where you put your sign down and people...
bring you into theirs.
Yeah, you bring people into your world. Now, this makes a lot of sense in terms of it being a co-op covenant, because there's a lot of people that are looking to co-op for people, but not everybody is looking for co-op. So when you put down your white sign, you're kind of just waiting. But if you see a blue sign, people that want co-op are going to be flocking to that, and a lot of people want to help other people. And if you're getting invaded, you could be like, okay, there's might be a gank here, or might be helping a guy out with a boss, but
yeah,
do you know what I mean? So if you're being invaded, you put down your blue sign, and people can come in and help you. Or you can put down your blue sign. Chances are outside of a boss room, people know there's going to be a boss there that you want help with.
Your sign invites people into your world. The way this covenant would rank up, of course, it would be an auto ranking system like Dark Souls 2, where you wouldn't have to offer covenants. Covenants would just rank up themselves, and you would get like new player sort of rewards for it. Things like Blood Bite Ring, Poison Bite Ring, Ring of Steel Protection, like just very minor stuff that might give newer players more incentive to play the game because it makes the game slightly easier for them.
Potential blue tier stone ring, maybe like a Ring of Favour and Protection sort of thing.
Yeah,
just that kind of thing.
And of course, if you do take someone's blue sign and you go into their world as a blue phantom, the blue phantom's duty would be fulfilled if they either beat the boss or they killed the invader in that world. One or the other, not both. So that way, like,
you're not forced to beat the boss just to get out the world.
Yeah, so it gives you the choice of, like, I'm either going to help the guy with the boss or I'm going to help the guy with an invader, and it will be one of those two scenarios, but either one of those scenarios ends with the blue gaining a rank in the end.
Yeah, and I think this is, it definitely brings a unique flavour for the Way of Blue, and it means that the other covenants aren't fucking reliant on it.
Yeah.
It serves a purpose for the Way of Blue, whilst not hindering the purpose of
another covenant, which relies on a rewardless covenant.
Exactly. So, although it's a cool idea having like, oh, we come and help these people, it just doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, and especially if the people you help have no reason to like actually wear the thing that brings the help.
Like, the help in and of itself isn't enough of a reason. You can just summon a white sign.
Yeah, exactly. You just pick up a white.
So,
done.
There you go. I guess we'll be moving on to the Sunbros next.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can talk about the Sunbros. So when using a red orb as a Sunbro, at least the wiki says that you are prioritised with worlds that already have red invaders in them. So it's kind of like co-op redding. And if that is true, we do like that is implemented in the game. It's pretty cool.
It gives a new dynamic to the Sunbros anyway.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they're just gold white phantoms basically.
Yeah. So there really isn't a whole lot wrong with the Sunbros as they're implemented right now. I think it just benefits from the overall changes that we would bring with like giving more Covenant rewards. So while the rewards are good and do fit the Covenant, they are very faith reliant.
Both of them are, because it's Sacred Oath and Great Lightning Spear.
Yeah, so there should be something more to do with Slayer in this Covenant, like you get his weapons and armour or whatever. You know, like we said, we would like it if the Covenants had more ranks just to begin with in general, the way they did.
And especially for the Sunbros, where both the rewards are like very faith based, so there's not much reason for build outside of faith to even invest in the Sunbros.
Yeah.
Other than maybe they want the red orb side of it, which is cool as well. And hopefully the white orbs, the white sign side of it still like it makes the summon range wider.
Yeah.
Like hopefully that's still put in place in the game. That'd be pretty nice.
So other things that you could improve on is that Sunbros could have more Estus than regular white phantoms. So that would be a co-op incentive to actually be a Sunbro. If you're looking for a co-op,
that's an incentive for both the Sunbro and the host, because the Sunbro has more healing pots, which means they'll last longer, which is also an incentive for the host, because then their summon will last longer and their summon won't waste all their Estus on the way to the boss, because they'll have a little bit more. Because right now you get 50%, so maybe give Sunbros 75% of their total Estus or something like that.
Also, like we said, less faith heavy rewards, really, but that way you've got a white sign dynamic for a Covenant, and then you've got the blue sign dynamic, which, you know, it's two ways for co-op. So you've got one where you go into their world and one where they come into your world.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to do co-op help Covenants anyway, and we think that might be a way to improve these two particular Covenants, especially the Way of Blue, which right now in our eyes is just garbage. But yeah, moving on to the next Covenants, which will be player assistance. So, moving on to the Covenants that we labelled as player assistance Covenants, we're going to be speaking about Blue Sentinels and Dark Moonblade at the same time here, because they're the same fucking thing.
Yeah, they are.
Literally the same thing.
Except only one difference, where if you're a Dark Moonblade and you kill an Aldrich Covenant member, you get 2 Proof of Concord instead of 1.
Yeah, you get a Proof of Concord well kept, which you pop for 2 Proof of Concords kept.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. Which means that there is literally no reason to be in the Blue Sentinels, because the Dark Moonblade has even greater incentive. Has the same incentive, plus an extra incentive if you kill an Aldrich.
And to make
so
it,
it's objectively superior.
They both have the same Covenant rewards, just to put that out there.
Yeah, they share rank and rewards, by the way. So
Yeah.
leveling up Dark Moonblade levels up Blue Sentinels as well. But another issue with these Covenants, though, is that they rely on the Way of Blue, which we've already said is a massive oversight, because people ditch the Way of Blue. And it means that all 3 Covenants are going to end up dead, especially Dark Moonblade, because by the time you get to Dark Moonblade, the people that are in the Way of Blue are way too low level for you to help anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just a really bad thing to do.
Again, it requires people in the Way of Blue basically charity wearing the Covenant just so Dark Moonblade players can get PvP.
Yeah, and also the rivalry with Aldrich only goes as far as an extra Covenant reward.
Yeah.
Like, if a host is invaded by an Aldrich, they don't get more priority than anybody else who's invaded when it comes to Dark Moonblade, which doesn't make any sense if they're saying there's a rivalry between these two guys. Why wouldn't the Dark Moonblade be like prioritising Aldrich over...
So if an Aldrich Covenant member gets summoned in Irithel, so would the Dark Moonblade to counteract that, but that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, so the Dark Moonblade's only purpose is the same as the Blue Sentinels. It just so happens, if an Aldrich shows up and you kill him, then you get extra goodies.
Yeah,
that's
and
it.
Again, completely reliant on Way of Blue, so that's basically need 2 people unwillingly cooperating, so one of them gets a reward.
Yeah, so what we think we should do... Now, this takes us back to do you remember the Black Eye Orb that we mentioned, where the Covenant related? Well, if you were a Dark Moonblade, the Black Eye Orb would now be a Blue Eye Orb. And what that would let you do is that it would allow you to invade people
that are being invaded.
Yeah, so like you could pop your Blue Eye Orb and you would invade people that have Aldrich in their world, or a Red in their world, or... they could even use it as Sin, like it did in Dark Souls 1, because right now, as far as we're aware in Dark Souls 3, Sin has literally no consequence at all. Like, 0. We think it could be a good idea if Rosarias can't be helped by Dark Moonblade, because Rosarias are meant to be the red PvP Covenant, so why would you come to the aid of them?
Yeah.
And one really good idea that one idea I think is really good is that we could put more definition on the rivalry between Dark Moonblade and Aldrich. So just run with me here. So a host summons 2 white signs. One of the members is a Dark Moonblade, the other member is an Aldrich. Now they're both co-op summons, but they're in rival covenants. So these 2 phantoms are now opposed, they're against each other. So now they have to fight each other.
Well, they don't have to fight, but they can. And it'd be cool.
Yeah. In the same way that say a host picks up a white sign. Now the host is a Dark Moonblade, he's wearing the Dark Moonblade Covenant rune. Now he picks up a white sign, the summon is an Aldrich, so that white is now a purple, and now the host has to fight the Aldrich because the rivalries are, and vice versa. And it would happen in every single instance. Dark Moonblade and Aldrich would be opposed to each other, or could be opposed to each other, unless they decide to we're both white signs, so we won't fight each other.
This would also be in addition to being in the Covenant would auto summon you in to help people in a riffle.
Yeah, because it would be like an area defense, because you'd be defending against the Aldrich, who are the area defense in a riffle.
Like we said, there's area defense covenants, and we'll get to them a bit later on. So this will make a bit more sense once we start talking about them. But this means that there's you've got the Blue Eye Orb, which has 3 modes of potentially invading people, as well as you get auto summoned in Irithel. So that's like 4 ways of potential PvP,
as well as the random summoning a Dark Moonblade and an Aldrich mistake the host could make, and then that's more PvP, or a Dark Moonblade summoning an Aldrich, and Like, it just allows for a greater dynamic that allows for more participation for both the Dark Moonblade and the Aldrich Covenant across not only just having one specific invasion path.
Yeah.
And the Covenants then, of course, become more defined. The Rivalry is a lot more defined as well, and it makes more sense. Because right now, Dark Moonblades and Aldrich can co-op whenever they like.
Yeah.
Which, they hate each other.
It would just bring a little bit of extra lore-based PvP to the game, and I think, it would definitely have benefited from
And
that.
the reason why I said they shouldn't help Rosaria's Fingers is because when you join Rosaria's Fingers, Siren, if that's her name, the Dark Moonblade wench that shows up in Firelink, she stops helping me and she's like, next time we cross paths, I'm going to chib you.
Yeah.
So, get her to fuck.
So, yeah, I mean, that also means that you've not got like a rivalry, but you've got like a sort of intense hatred of like we're going to also refer to it as Red Covenant, the one that's essentially meant to be the Dark Wraiths.
Yeah. So, now I guess we can move on to the area defense covenants like the Aldrich Covenant.
Yeah. Okay, so now we can talk about area defense covenants, both Aldrich and Farron, which may as well be the same thing, but it is bad that they aren't. So, they both have the same purpose, but different implementation. The areas that you go to where you're invaded by these people, you don't revisit them, so eventually the Covenant has nobody to invade. Unlike the Forest in Dark Souls 1, where you could go there multiple times per playthrough, and people would go there different times per playthrough, that isn't the case. You've only got one part to be invaded in for both of these Covenants, and that's kind of bad.
As well as because one area is very early, and that the Farron Covenant defends an area near the start of the game, and the Aldrich Covenant defends an area that's pretty much in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
It means that if you're in the Farron Covenant, as soon as people pass through that, they're never going to come back there because they're already at Aldrich level, and you're not gonna get interaction with people for that long because that's a low level area. Eventually, you'll out level the people who you should invade.
Yeah, and chances are, if you're doing PvP, you're probably going to be leveling up to a PvP type level. Not everybody wants to do low level PvP, especially not in a fucking swamp, and especially not for one of the Covenant rewards to be completely useless thanks to poise not being implemented into the game.
Yeah, and plus the fact that once you do out level Farron and you still want to do area invasions, where do you go? You go to the Aldrich Covenant. Everybody migrates from Farron to Aldrich, which means that the Farron Covenant has no purpose, which means the area defense part of the Farron areas isn't something that anybody has to worry about.
Now, Aldrich is actually okay. That's implemented pretty much how you would expect. However,
right in the middle of the game, there's a good level range there.
Yeah.
It just so happens that point in the game is also where the community have decided to put the red signs down, which means there's plenty of people to invade and stuff like that as well. So the Aldrich Covenant is actually alright where it is. But you don't get a Covenant reward from Aldrich for killing a Dark Moonblade.
Yeah,
there's no incentive to kill Dark Moonblade over the host.
And again, there's no rivalry interaction in terms of the Dark Moonblades. Like we said, don't get brought into there if you are an Aldrich, which is okay if you're just in there for an area of defense. But this was done better in Dark Souls 2. I mean, it was done perfectly in Dark Souls 1 thanks to the Forest, where you could be any level and be summoned in anybody any level. It was just that was like a sort of chaotic PvP area, which Aldrich would benefit from being that way. But in Dark Souls 2 they sort of had this equivalent with the Bellkeeper Covenant, but you had a low level version and a mid-game version, so that gave you a much wider range of levels to be summoned in from. And especially some people would be at a higher level in that area thanks to the Lost Sinner boss. Yeah. So people would be floating about that area at maybe a later level to begin with.
Yeah, it just widened the spectrum that a Bellkeeper could invade, and that's kind of what's missing here, because they've done the same thing as the Bellkeepers,
but they've just
split it between two covenants, which means that the Farron Covenant eventually becomes useless because you out-level it, and the Aldrich Covenant is the only one that you can go to. So what we were thinking that could be good for Aldrich is that Aldrich would have their own orb where they could invade outside of their area invasion zone, outside of Irithel, and what they would do is they would back up invading phantoms who are now being fended off by Dark Moonblade.
Yeah.
So Aldrich would invade worlds where Dark Moonblade phantoms are present. And of course, if Aldrich and Farron just became the Aldrich Covenant, it would be much easier because then they're not fighting for slots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
As well as we think maybe give them 3 areas they can invade in, so you've got an area at the start, middle, and the end, so that there's a wide. So the Covenant can always be active regardless of your level.
Yeah, so you always be able to be summoned into one of these areas, and it means that you're not forced to leave the Covenant at a higher level.
Yeah, and then it gives the Covenant like sort of a proactive thing that you can do in it as well. Like you can invade as opposed to the Covenant saying right now it's time for you to invade. There's something that you can do where you can go hunt blues, and of course you'd get an extra Covenant reward for killing the Dark Moonblades because there's a fucking rivalry. Once again, applying the Dark Moonblade and Aldrich rivalry always being an effect that we spoke about just a few minutes ago in the Dark Moonblade one.
Yeah.
So that would apply the same, where Aldrich and Dark Moonblade would be rivals even if they were white summons and stuff like that.
So again, our concepts for our Covenants is essentially to force interest and interactions between players in terms of PvP. Like we said, you know, if you don't want...
For PvP focused Covenants anyway,
yeah.
Dark Moonblade and Aldrich, definitely.
Yeah.
Because these are things that will make the game more exciting, they'll make the Covenants have... You'll have more incentive to be in the Covenant, because then you'll be like, the amount of fucking chaos you'll go through if the Covenants did this, it would be insane.
And it means it's something outside of just, I use the Red Eye Orb, I invade a guy, I kill him.
Yeah. So the next Covenant we want to talk about is what we believe was supposed to be the quote-unquote Dark Wraith Covenant.
And it would be better if it was presented as such.
Yeah, so we're talking of course about Rosaria's Fingers. Now, the reason why Rosaria's Covenant is really bad is because it doesn't actually do anything, it just exists. There's no interest in interactions. The Covenant isn't defined in any way other than this is where I go to respec, which is fucking stupid, by the way, that you have to join a Covenant to respec, especially when joining that Covenant ends a quest line in the fucking game.
Yeah, so you have to finish the quest line just if you want to respec, which I think is a little bit unfair. Not only that, because you're given the Red Eye Orb at the beginning of the game, well, near the beginning of the game, if you want it, it removes the purpose of the quote-unquote Red Covenant. So really, it should have been there to improve the incentive for being a Red Phantom. Which
we'll talk about now, because one of the things that we want to do to improve it is either we remove it, because there's no reason for it to be there, and we just respec it an NPC like we fucking should.
Yep.
Or we make it more PvP focused, like make it the only Covenant that could give you an Ember as a reward, or you get Embers per every player that you kill in a world. Something a little bit more Covenant centered, like maybe the Reds that use the Red Eye Orb while having this Covenant on, they'll invade a world and they'll have like 1 or 2 more Estus flasks than a non-Covenant Red would.
Which would definitely be a good incentive to be under that Covenant in of itself.
Yeah. Things as well, like the rewards you get for it don't really make sense. You get a Ring of Fog.
Yeah.
Like, surely they, like, I mean, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Of course, because that can help you with invasions, but if this is meant to be the Covenant that forces invasions, the whole point in the invasions was, like, in Dark Souls 1 is all about the Dark Wraiths and stuff like that, then wouldn't it make more sense to get something, like, along the lines of Dark Wraith Armor or the Dark Sword or something like that from a Covenant that is centered around the entire, like, purpose of the Dark Wraiths?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, having the Red Eye Orb is good, but it does remove the specific purpose for a Red Covenant that all the other games have had. No, it's not necessary. You don't necessarily have to have it, but, you know, it'd be better if...
There was a more incentive to use it.
Yeah, the Red Covenant is iconic, and it's a shame that that's been taken away from the game somewhat.
Yeah, but we do see as well that the Red Orb is completely necessary, because getting it that early in the game is what keeps the Dark Moon Covenant alive and the Blue Sentinel Covenant alive, because if nobody can invade the low-level blues, like the low-level way of blue, then the Dark Moonblade and the Blue Sentinels have nobody to help.
Yeah.
So the Red Orb being at the start of the game not only kills the Red Covenant, but it keeps the Dark Moonblade alive. But the Dark Moonblade are dead anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, we would obviously have our Dark Moonblade changes, as well as we still think that having the Red Eye Orb at the beginning of the game is very good for the PvP in general.
Yeah, so of course, just to make sure you guys are still followers here, that Black Eye Orb we were talking about, where it would change based on your Covenant, you'll have that and the Red Eye Orb separate, so that if you are a Dark Moonblade and you can't get any Dark Moonblade matchmaking, then you can do like Covenantless Red invasions, so you don't have any, like, there's like unrestricted invasions, it's just soul level, that sort of thing. So you've got the option of Covenant and non-Covenant invasions by adding the Black Eye Orb into the game as well. But of course, that's just our idea of putting that in there so that we can define the Covenants a little bit better and give them more unique roles.
Yeah. We're not saying that this is the way it definitely should be, but we think we're presenting a fairly decent argument that they should probably have hired us and we should probably be in charge of designing the Covenants.
Yeah, I mean, we should just kick out Miyazaki right now.
He can get...
We'll get Vati to write the story, we'll balance the online, and we'll get Namco to fucking all. But anyway, we've got one more Covenant to talk about, and then I think we're going to go into some of our ideas about Covenants that we'd like to see in the game, just to give sort of more dynamic interactions and stuff like that, more interesting
ideas that we've had.
Yeah, so we'll get onto that now.
So here we've got the fucking Mound Makers, right? So this Covenant's
interesting in theory, okay, but in practice it makes no sense, and it's actually completely pointless.
Yeah, and it's one sort of gimmick can only be taken advantage by very new players that don't know how the Covenant works.
Yeah. So let's just break it down. So what the Mound Makers do is, right, if you use a red orb and you're a Mound Maker, you go in as a purple Phantom. Now it's basically a nerfed red eye orb because you have like lower win requirements. You only have to kill the host or his phantoms, whereas if you're a red, you might have to kill all of them just to win.
Yeah.
So it's like an easy mode red orb, and you also can't help the players, which the whole point in the purple is to be completely independent and just be able to kill anything.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, on the flip side, if you use a white summon sign as a Mound Maker, well, it's pretty much the same as using a red summon sign, except they have a Seed of a Tree of Giants active by the time you get into the world.
Yeah, so the worst part about this is the whole sort of trick thing that you can do with the Mound Makers is by attacking the enemies to like help the player.
But they can still lock onto you.
Yeah, so you can still betray them, but you get the same effect with just using
the red eye orb in a white ring.
Yeah, so that can only be again taken advantage by new players, and you can't help them do the boss. So it's not like I'll do whatever the fuck I want. It's just a case of they summon you into the world, thinking, oh, I wonder what this does. They lock onto you. So they're either stupid or they're gonna attack you anyway. So,
or you know, if you do put a white summon sign down, you're just red orbing into a Seed of a Tree of Giants world is all you're doing.
Yeah.
Because with the white summon sign, not only can you be attacked by the host and his summons and any invaders, you can be attacked by the world as well, which is fucking stupid.
So what purpose does the Covenant actually serve? It doesn't do anything unique in and of itself.
And even like you might be thinking, well, it's just a hard mode red orb then, isn't it? But it isn't, because the win requirements are still the same. You still only have to kill the host or his phantoms. And if you only get one phantom, then you only need to kill one person, and it's just a red orb with a Seed of Tree of Giants. But you just need to kill one person, so the win requirements are still less.
Oh no, the red orb doesn't have the Seed of Tree of Giants. The things don't.
No, I'm saying the white sign is like a Seed of Tree of Giants. It's like a red orb with the seed already in place. But the win requirements are still lesser because you still only have to kill either or, not both. Like the red orb.
So it's not even a case of what this Covenant should be. It doesn't actually do anything unique in and of itself. And if it does, please correct us and don't fucking jump down our throats for it. But I think we're making a good argument for what we're trying to say. Really, this Covenant could have been replaced with something that just gives a more unique interaction to the game.
Yeah, because the only way we can think of improving the Covenant is to completely change the entire aspect about it, because the only thing it does, the only purpose we can think of it serving is to trick new players, but once again we've been over why that won't work.
Yeah, and you can
if
do
it does work,
anyway.
if it does work, then you're going to be spending a lot of time with it not working before it does.
Yeah.
So we'd have to completely change it, give it a new purpose. Like maybe we could make it like a late game area defense Covenant, but it would be immune to Dark Moonblades. Or some shit like that.
Yeah, but again,
we're just spitballing.
Yeah, so now we're going to actually get onto our spitballing ideas.
Yeah, we've got like 4 more Covenant ideas, which actually brings us back up to the 9 total Covenants if you make our changes.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So.
Convenient that, isn't it?
Okay, so our first thought for a unique Covenant is a 1v1 Covenant, right? So a Covenant where if you're in the Covenant, you can only be invaded by members of that Covenant. And you can only invade people in that Covenant as well. Now, this is fine because it balances itself out, because it's not a case of, oh, I can just wear this Covenant and not be invaded. People are going to be invading a lot because people are looking for specifically 1v1 PvP. So you're going to be getting that a lot with that Covenant. Now, you could think, well, you could just replace that with an arena, and we would like to see an arena personally. However, we understand that the inclusion of an arena into the game would then just reduce further the amount of in-world PvP that would be going on. So it is probably better to have a Covenant-related version of it. That way, it'll be boiled down to just people that want the 1v1 experience.
Yeah, just want duels and stuff like that. And then, of course, you could make the rewards, like, you could give like embers as rewards. There could be a leaderboard that shows like wins, losses, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That hopefully won't get hacked.
Yeah. Preferably this Covenant would be near the beginning of the game. Again, if it was an arena, it would be at the beginning of the game, so people can just PvP at their own fucking will when they want to.
Yeah, because a big problem for me with Dark Souls 2 when it came to the arena was that if I went into NG+, I'd have to go through like a third of the game just to get to PvP.
Yeah.
And I didn't like Dark Souls 2 PvE that much, so I'd rather not have done that.
Yeah, so this would be, be able to force an interaction between
people looking to duel.
Yeah, and I mean, not everybody's going to be looking for dueling type PvP, but it means that you can actually set up a fucking like a fight club without being bothered by other phantoms.
Well, you wouldn't be able to set. You wouldn't be able to set up a fight club because it'd be limited to. Strictly
you know what you mean. You know what I mean. You can.
Yeah, you can set up 1v1 duels where it's like the Covenant itself could do something like both players get 3 Estus and full health or something like that.
Or you just can't heal.
You
whatever.
just can't heal. Yeah, exactly. So this is a Covenant, of course, that would be saved specifically for people looking for 1v1 PvP, and that's it. Nothing else. And the Covenant would balance itself. People might take advantage of it, like they'll put it on just so they can run one red through everything. But you can do that with a red sign anyway, and hardly anybody fucking does that. So it's not a big problem. It's not going to be a big problem. Because more people will want the 1v1s than people will want to troll the people who want 1v1s.
Yeah.
So maybe someone will be a dick about it, yeah. But everybody's a dick in Dark Souls at some point.
Yeah.
Idea number 2 is something we did touch on a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
We were talking about the Mound Makers. We're thinking of like a late game area Covenant, where that you would be summoned in to defend this late game area, so it would be high level PvP, and Dark Moonblade wouldn't be able to assist the host, so any phantoms that would be auto summoned into that area were purely for fighting the host.
Yeah, ideally it would actually be an area like the forest, essentially.
Yeah.
That it's just it doesn't have the rivalry chaos PvP going on. It would just be a case of like people are getting summoned in to stop the host progressing to the level. Ideally somewhere that's maybe early game. You know, that you can come back to late game, so there's a massive level range for it. You know, something like that. We were also thinking that you could possibly apply that same thing to the Dark Wraith Covenant, like maybe just for whatever lore reasons the Dark Moonblade can't get into the Abyss or wherever the fuck it is, and it's just like a place where you're constantly invaded off Dark Wraiths.
Yeah.
And it would give the Dark Wraiths, if you're part of that Covenant, an auto summon feature, so it's an even more bigger incentive to be part of that Covenant.
Yeah.
But another idea was the chaotic PvP area.
Just before we go into this, we understand this would be incredibly difficult to implement.
Yeah.
We do get this, but we think this would be fucking awesome if they could do it. So this is like an incredibly way out there spitball is all fuck idea.
Yeah.
We're aware of this, but we think it would be amazing, so continue.
So a Warzone like type area. So like Irithel is, however, with Irithel it's like it builds up. You've got the host, and then an Aldrich will come in, and then maybe you'll be invaded by a red, or they've got a summon with them, and all the people kind of build up on top of it. However, it would be cool if, as a host, you could walk into seeing 3v3 PvPs with
Dark Moon and Aldrich, for example.
Yeah, and basically you'd always be there until you died. Essentially, it would just change host continuously, and there would just be people fucking fighting continue forever. Essentially.
Yeah. So basically, say it as a 3v3. A Dark Moonblade kills an Aldrich. That Aldrich, his fight in that battle's over, but the fight continues a 3v2 until another Aldrich is brought in. It's a 3v3 again. And then a Dark Moonblade dies, another Dark Moonblade gets brought in, and the fight just keeps going and going and going like that. So you're just in it until you die. And this works in This could work in Dark Souls 3 really well, because when phantoms are killed, you get Estus back, which means that you don't need to worry about running out of health and Estus if you're still killing and you're still proactive in the fight and you're like trying to get Estus back. Then you can be in there for a long time.
Yeah.
And it just means that it'd be endless chaotic PvP. It would be constant like group versus group. It would be a war zone. And once again, it'd be very difficult to implement, yes, but we think it's a really cool idea, and I'd love to see something like that in games in general.
Yeah, definitely. So, maybe that could be like the last defense area for the Aldrich Covenant.
Yeah, that could be like really late game, so it's high level 3v3s between Aldrich and Darkmoon, or between any other Covenants that have rivalries and shit like that in the game. Like, you could have the same thing for like the Dark Wraith Covenant and the Sunbros or something like that, because it's like we want to help people and we want to beat people up, like good v bad sort of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that you could add to that sort of thing. However, I think it's important to note that we would like, if there was 2 area defense type Covenants, you've got one where the host is invaded, and then you've got phantoms that come in to help the host, and then you've got one where the host is invaded by a phantom, and then more phantoms can come in to help the phantom. So
like Darkmoon.
Yeah,
Darkroot. Sorry.
Yeah, so you've got like you've got an area defense PvP
where
it's weighted
in.
It's weighted. You've got one where it's weighted in both directions essentially,
and then you've got one which is very heavily weighed in the Covenant's direction, because it's their job to defend the area.
Exactly. So you know that, like I said, we want to make every Covenant have a very unique purpose for being there, as well as being able to encourage PvP just in the world via invasions anyway.
Yeah, which brings us on to our last covenant when it comes to like encouraging PvP in the world.
There's actually one that we missed out, so second last.
Second last. Yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna go with this one first then. The mechanic that's in the Looking Glass Knight or the Old Monk from Demon Souls, where you can bring players in to the boss fight. We would love that to be a covenant. Like the Looking Glass Knight in Dark Souls 2, if it was a covenant, it would have been amazing because it never fucking worked the way it was. Yeah. Because it was almost exclusively limited to NG+. You had never even seen it then anyway because of soul memory and how we never even did figure out how the matchmaking worked with it and shit like that. But
and the way it happened was so weird and wishy-washy as well. You put your red side
down. You had to put it down at the exact time the Mirror Knight was summoning someone, when instead you could wear like a Covenant rune, and if the Mirror Knight decided to summon someone, then it would pull you in because you're willing to enter.
Yeah.
And you could have that there, it'd be a Covenant thing, and it'd be kind of cool to have this boss where it had an online interaction like it did with the Old Monk in Demon Souls, which I've went up against a guy, the Old Monk Demon Souls, who's using the Bone Smasher. It changes the boss fight so much, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It would just add like a really great unique element to that, and when we realised that it would have made the fucking Mirror Knight spectacularly great.
Yeah, because right now the Mirror Knight and the Old Monk are both incredibly luck reliant. Like, it's just random chance if you get into it as a Mirror Knight Squire or even as the boss as the Old Monk. It's incredibly luck based, especially with the Old Monk now. It's so badly luck based that you just never see that mechanic. Some people never see it. But if it was a Covenant, then people would have the option to be the mechanic or even witness the mechanic a lot more often, because it would be an auto thing that would pull players into the world because they're wearing the select Covenant rune or ring or whatever it is you'd have to wear.
And there would always be people playing through the game, and I mean, sure, you need to time it up, but you know, it's got to be a lot more likely for it to happen if there's a Covenant attached to it.
Well, I mean, it's the same timing as like the Dark Moonblade coming in to help a host who's been invaded. As soon as the requirement's met, it can start the summon. The requirement for the Mirror Knight would be as soon as his health gets down to a certain point and he lifts his shield to summon someone, boom, it could start the summon. Then all they'd have to do is make sure the game was quick enough so that when like you broke out of the Mirror Knight shield, you'd be in the world. That's all they'd have to do.
So finally, for the last Covenant, there should just be, because we touched on it very briefly, an offline Covenant, like Covenant of Champions.
Yeah, like Covenant of Champions. Yeah,
I knew there was one you missed.
Yeah. So we would like that because it gives players who don't want a PvP or don't want a co-op or anything like that, who want to just play the game by themselves,
or
it gives them incentive. Yeah, it gives them incentive to play it by themselves. Like Covenant of Champions made the game a little bit tougher. You couldn't summon anybody for help, and you got rewarded with things like the Vanquisher's Seal, which gave your bare fists a load of damage and you get a good moveset. Interesting things like that just give you more incentive to play the game without any help.
It just give you like an achievement with it, just some bragging rights, just something that again gives a Covenant option for people that just do not want PvP,
or people that can't because they have shit internet or they don't have internet or whatever. It gives you like your internet goes out for a week. Now what are you going to do in Dark Souls? You're just going to have normal PvE?
It could be
You've
cool
done that 100 times now.
The Covenant of Champions could be cool in the sense that it brings up a lot more NPC invaders.
Yeah,
that could be something that's interesting. So yeah, just shit like that, and that's pretty much our last idea in the last part of the video.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a long one, guys, but that's pretty much... Like, again, we bring these points up and these ideas up because we want to try and like see if we can find a way to make the game better. We don't want to criticise the game blindly and just be like, oh, it's fucking shit, we hate it and all that. But we don't. We love these games. Like, they're the best games we've played, easily, so...
And it'd be great to get jobs as game designers, let's be honest.
Hint from off.
Let's be fair, I think our ideas are actually fairly sound. I mean, we've put a lot of thought into the possible outcomes of our particular ideas. So, I mean, it's not like our ideas are especially bad or just like, that's fucking dumb.
I mean, but we might have missed something. So, by all means, if you guys have got like ideas for how Covenants can be improved or why you think we shouldn't be touching certain Covenants, and, like with the ideas that we've got and stuff like that, then let us know. Or if you've got ideas for even other different types of Covenants that would be cool, then let us know, because this, like, we made this because it's open to discussion. Like, this is just what we think could make the game better and make the Covenants more of a feature in game as opposed to just something else to equip for a little while.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, like, criticism out of kindness, basically.
Yeah.
We're trying to try and make the game better, and that is what we're going for in the end.
So, I mean, it's been a long slog of a video, but we hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion. And I guess, we've got a bunch of other videos like this coming, so you can look forward to that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of critique and praise coming for quite a lot of the things in Dark Souls, actually.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess we'll be seeing you in the next video, guys. Bye.
See you guys then.